welcome everyone. This is your host, Leilani Coffin, the publisher and CEO of the Learning Council, also author of the book, The Consumerization of Learning, and proud Edu Jedi Grandmaster. And we have a couple of the Edu Jedi with us today. Actually, all three of you guys have your lightsabers, I believe, your plastic lightsabers. So we're going to have a good conversation today about setting district-wide digital priorities, which is a big issue right now for school districts. We've been through craziness for months and months, and now we have to get serious going into spring about really what are we doing at the school district level. So I'm going to turn over this conversation to our illustrious co-host, Howie Bender, who's the Vice President of K-12 from Desire to Learn, to sort of pose the questions and help run this panel. We have with us Cale Charles, who's Assistant Superintendent of Assessment, Curriculum, and Instruction from St. Valley Schools. Hi, Cale.
Hi.
Yeah, good to have you. You know, you and I have been friends for many years. I have to put in here for a second how proud I am of you and your district. And hi to your superintendent.
Very good. And thank you. And we certainly have enjoyed the partnership over the years.
Yeah, thank you. And then Lisa Lund, another good friend who's Director of Educational Technology and Library Services from Denver Public Schools. And Lisa, I regard you as one of the intellectual giants in the market as well.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We love our partnership, and it's nice to see Cale even just remotely. I haven't seen him in a while, so thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. And welcome to our new friend, David Jarbo, who's the Executive Director of Technology Innovation, Harrison School District 2. So good to have you, David.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah. Okay, so Howie, I'm going to turn it back over to you and have you sort of pose the questions. I'm going to take myself off camera, but I will be lurking in the background in case you need me to comment on anything.
Thank you for that introduction, Leilani. It really is a pleasure to welcome everyone to our panel discussion on setting district-wide digital priorities. Leilani had a chance to introduce everyone and mention where they're coming from, so I won't repeat that. I'll just say that we could not be joined by better panelists as we prepare to jump into and learn about today's topic. For us at D2L, it is a real pleasure to be able to partner with the Learning Council to virtually host this event. For those not familiar with D2L, our learning platform Brightspace is a cloud-based K-12 learning management system built by educators for educators that works on any device. Brightspace is a secure, reliable platform that lets you create engaging courses using technology that fits your needs, and more than just an LMS. Brightspace for K-12 combines the tools and supports that school districts need to build and deliver great and amazing teaching and learning experiences. Proud to say that our relentless commitment to building the best learning platform has resulted in Brightspace winning a CODI Award for Best K-12 LMS 2 years in a row, and we are definitely going for the three-peat. We have a history of working with districts across the US. In Colorado, where our panelists are from, we are proud to support teaching and learning at the higher education level with clients such as Colorado Community College System, Colorado Mesa University, Aspen University, and others. I came to D2L after spending the better part of a decade advising education leaders in government and working with district leaders across the country. One thing that always jumped out to me was the diversity of approaches and how schools and districts think about a plan for the use of technology. In some cases, tech was a window to smaller scale innovation. In others, the digital plan was at the core of the overall strategic plans aimed at raising the bar and closing the gap in student achievement. And others had no digital plans at all. But if digital plans were not in place everywhere prior to the pandemic, there's no doubt they are critical to the post-pandemic plans for education. So I very much look forward to hearing and learning more about this today. And with that, why don't we jump in to the conversation? Why don't we start with a quick overview? Just give me 1 second here. A quick overview of what happened at your districts as the pandemic hit and deepened. As your educators suddenly needed to connect and teach online, what steps did your district take to support and facilitate that pivot to online learning? and curious to hear if those actions were informed by an existing digital plan or not. So for this one, why don't we start with David?
Thanks, Howie. Yeah, we kind of had a progressive plan for students and technology. It starts in K-5 where we had, a lot of mobile carts and labs so that students could have regular hands-on experience with technology, and looking at beginning that journey through our curriculum and the resources that we had available. For middle school, we had kind of an in-school one-to-one program going so that every middle schooler had a dedicated laptop. And then at high school, for the past 5 years, we've had a full-blown one-to-one device for every high school student. In fact, if they graduate from our high school, they actually get to keep that device and hopefully continue their journey. So we have that in place. So as soon as, we kind of had this urgent call, I think it was on a Friday afternoon when we gathered everyone and were made aware of what the districts were planning to do. We began to put things in motion, started some committee work immediately. And obviously instruction was a major factor in that, but we're a title district. So we also became kind of the community hub for resources for families too, not just education, but just physical needs, safety needs, and really gathered the community to support our families in every aspect. But moving forward, obviously we didn't have full devices deployed. So the high school did continue pretty much successfully. Obviously we had an LMS in place. So we saw the use jump as we looked at our analytics on that learning going on in home. We provided, we actually went to kind of a packet system for K-8, and a lot of families were more comfortable with that. But through our communication platforms, kept communication going with families. And it was, for K-8, it was more just about communication rather than delivery. But then we immediately had our departments begin to gear up for the fall because we knew this wasn't going away. So we instituted a summer institute for teachers on how to use the system. We decided, we had an LMS, but we went ahead and launched that K-12 through the CARES Act fund. We purchased 7,000 laptops, which were Chromebooks, to supplement the high school one-to-one, which use window devices. We were able to get enough devices delivered in time the week before school. I think we all know how that went on delivery of devices, to pretty much meet the need of every student. We also then had to deploy some in-school devices to make the need. But by the fall, every student had their own dedicated device. And then we also worked with Comcast Essentials and Sprint and T-Mobile to provide hotspots for every family that needed help with connectivity, because we got the devices out, and then it was the connectivity, and then it was how's the connectivity working in their homes, because it didn't seem to work the same for everybody. So it really became then a matter of responding to the needs. We launched a family help desk, which we hadn't had before, so that students and families could call in or enter tickets into our help desk system. We shifted district personnel to really support teachers in how to do distance learning, because we realize it's not the same. You can't just go from in class to distance. There's different skills and different techniques and different best practices that needed to happen. So in the fall, we did bring students back, or gave the option of hybrid, full-time or 4 days a week, or the e-learning. Families could choose. And we kind of continued that throughout the fall, responding to the condition in the county, and what was happening as far as what was being permitted for attendance at school. Our priority has always been to get students in person. And now moving forward, we're looking at, it's interesting, some families have kind of latched on to the e-learning option. And so now we're exploring how to expand that as a permanent solution. but through the spring again, we're going to respond. But our goal is to have all students back in person that want to come back in person by February 22nd. So that's maybe an ambitious goal, but that's our goal for now.
Thank you for that. It's a lot to take from it. Just as you were wrapping up there, what jumped out to me is that if it wasn't clear before, personalized and different learning paths have been highlighted. For some, the move to online was painful and probably not one they look to repeat right away. For others, it was a great new adventure and a way to really embark on a new way of learning that works for them. Thank you for sharing that, David. Cale, coming to you with the same question, interested to hear a little bit about your experience.
So our experience, and I want to start back a little bit, we've been looking at becoming more of a digital school district since about 2010. And in fact, in 2012, we took a hard look at it. What do we want our classes to be? What are the attributes we want in a classroom? And then mirror that with actions. And so through that, we came up with a learning technology plan, again, about 2011. And what we really wanted to do is make sure teachers and students have the tools to investigate, to communicate, to collaborate and explore concepts and context in authentic context. That's a lot. But we really wanted to create a more engaging, personalized environment way before we got into this. And so that gave us, just like David was saying, and don't take everybody, all the districts out there, I commend you for the huge leaps you took. What David just described is gargantuan in nature of getting all that together. We're a one-to-one district, pre-K through 12, so that wasn't a problem. All those type of things, we were already there. We had to get some additional connectivity for some of our neighborhoods, but that was pretty easy for us. We'd also built the capacity within our instructional model of blended learning. And so the principles of blended learning will go into a hybrid, they'll go into a total remote. And that helped us tremendously as we made the transition when everybody had to go remote in March of last year. And that has helped us and our teachers. And in fact, we have, as I believe David mentioned, we have people that probably don't want to go back to an totally in-person environment again, because they like the flexibility that we're giving them with an online environment or even a hybrid environment. They're also wanting more choice, which leads to further personalization. And that's huge, guys, when you think about that. I said when we stopped, and I visited with Leilani about this, and I don't make light of this, but I told our staff we were going to come out of this crisis better than we went into it. And that was our goal. And it's been tough. It really has. I mean, just switching from we're in person, now we're not in person, and all the districts across Colorado have had to do that. But the lessons that we've learned, we are really looking at some very unique models. And I really encourage everybody that's on the webinar now, if you haven't read the Expo Learning that the Learning Council's put out, the pamphlet, or visited with Leilani or Doug or any of the people in there, I encourage you to do, because we're going to head towards that ourselves as part of getting better coming out of this. So I won't duplicate any things that David talked about in terms of getting everything ready. We had a lot of that ready to go. We were very fortunate. We have a very supportive community, really great leadership with our Board of Education and a dynamite superintendent. And so we were able to go through this probably better than a lot of folks. But I'll say one thing, we had a vision that we stuck to, and that's why. We had done the hard work ahead of time to make this. Thank you.
Thank you, Cale. And it's interesting to hear, and it's, I think we're seeing leadership in action when you talk about coming out of this better than we have before and really drawing on lessons and being intentional about understanding what that means for the future. We will probably come back to that because it's an interesting topic about what it starts to look like in the context of digital plans, but also just what does the post-pandemic world start to look like as we start to get the vaccine out. And so I'll flag that as a piece for a few minutes from now. But with that, Lisa, over to you.
So I think we had a good vision. I think somewhat. Obviously, we are a large school district. We have 95,000 students and well over 190 schools. charter, innovation, and DPS run schools. So there's a lot of flexibility in Denver. So I think the one thing, obviously spring was, I think, can we survive? And then let's regroup now and come back. So we put forth a consistent LMS for our K-5 as well as 6-12, which is driven on the spring factor that parents are so confused about where to go. So we got to help our parents because they're really struggling. So this is going to be consistent. First time in a long time in DPS, we said, ye shall. This is the way it will be. And I know Kale is laughing. And then we pick some consistent tools for our teachers to use. And these are the tools. It's great if you go beyond this, great for you, but you know what? These are the tools that we're gonna say are gonna be successful. They're gonna engage our kids in content. They're gonna give them some voice and choice in content. And I think we ramped up professional learning. I'm pretty sure all three of us here know tech is important. And I think our teachers and principals know it, but now they know that there is no choice. And so it has propelled our department from, 0 to hero in a very short amount of time. And we touched 5,000 teachers at the beginning of the school year, getting them ready to get started this year. So kudos to my small team of 6 digital coaches that support all these teachers throughout the district. And I think too, that not only buying devices, which we know by supply chain and all these other things, we got our kids devices. We are one-to-one in some of our middle and high schools through our My Tech program. And that will be what we will be fully one-to-one 6-12 in the upcoming school year. And I'm pretty sure we have enough devices to push down to our elementary students at this point, based on the volume of devices that we've purchased in DPS right now. And I think too, broadband hotspots were a big issue, and they still are a major pain point for us in Denver. And so we got as many hotspots as we could find. They're still trickling in for our kiddos, but we have places within Denver proper that don't have internet, and it's ridiculous. And this is in our far northeast area. And so with the mayor and the governor's new push for broadband, I think it'll be important for not only large districts like ours, but many of our rural districts throughout Denver, throughout Colorado, because we know they're struggling in a different way than we are here in the Denver proper area. I think that too, I'm trying not to repeat everything. I tried to write notes to myself so I wouldn't forget, but I just think that we've made great strides. I get we have a ways to go, and I don't want to say that, we have the magic pill that we can all take and be successful in this. We're still struggling in some areas, but I think that our teachers have embraced this remote learning. And I said in a meeting yesterday, we are no longer in the 21st century. So we have to stop saying that we're preparing our kids for the 21st century because, oh, by the way, we've hit the 22nd and we didn't prepare our kids for the 21st. So we have to stop saying those things. And how do we propel this vision forward? We cannot go back to teaching like we were teaching before. We keep saying that, and I want that to become a reality moving forward for all of our kids. I heard everyone say our kids like remote, and some of our kids are loving it. Some are not, and I think it's just a learning style for all of us. But we are looking at how do we continue to change this moving forward as well, just like everyone else has said. So.
Interesting you say we cannot go back to what we had before, while at the same time, there's going to be a big sigh of relief from so many people when the pandemic's done, and there's some inertia, natural inertia to kind of try to go back. So in that context, and Lisa, something you shared about a key to your approach being for the first time having a consistent approach to technology being at the core of your plan. I want to pick up on that. And, if we go back to pre-pandemic times, managing and pushing forward a district-wide plan for student achievement, district-wide plan for equity, focuses on raising the bar and closing the gap in achievement language I always use. Those plans were never easy. And then the pandemic has come in and kind of taught us a whole lot of lessons. So I'm curious, and we'll start with you, Kale, on this one. What lessons have you drawn about how to successfully drive those plans, be them student achievement or equity plans or others, with the aid of technology? And interested if could be lessons over the last 5 years, or or lessons specific to the pandemic that have really jumped out at you as opportunities to learn and embrace something different?
So what I hear you saying, Howie, is really around initiatives, and really collaboration, of course, is always a big, huge part of that. Getting our stakeholders involved, creating that vision, and then getting an action plan, incentives, and having a data measurement to see if you're successful with it. That's just some things we do ongoing in St. Vrain with what we look at with initiatives. I can't stress enough the need for communication, and communication in several different venues for everybody in this. It's just crucial. Years ago, we'd send out an email and think that was good enough, and it's not. We know that. And so the communication with parents, with students, with staff on anything new, whether it be plans to deal with equity, student achievement, and offering multiple opportunities for students. And we had to do it virtually, of course, last spring. But for example, we increased our AP participation in our minority categories, while at the same time raising the level of the grades they got on their AP tests. And that was in a pandemic situation. That was done because we had multiple ways for them to connect to us through our learning management systems, through after school, through weekend. We really wanted to create that 24/7 environment, which we had a lot of it going anyway. So that's just one example of how that does communication and offering multiple ways. You talk about professional development. It was mentioned earlier. You've got to have lots of different pathways for your staff to look at professional development. Real-time, on-time training is great. And then to look at having office hours where people can drop in and out in a safe environment. So really it's about that almost overused thinking outside the box phrase. And that's what we've got to do. And we find it really exciting to do that, because we're starting to really see things such as like our graduation rate. It was the highest it's ever been in the history of our district this last year. And that includes our Hispanic population, includes all of our minorities, includes female. We did that by engaging our students. And I think that's something that we're really committed towards, is making sure that students can think critically and apply their learning and own their learning. That's a big initiative that we had through this.
So I'm hearing in that when you're thinking about technology and digital plans and how it fits into that, you'd want to see how it helps with the consistency, with the measurement of success, consistency of practice, and key communication, and an ability to help you communicate in a variety of ways and a variety of channels.
Yeah, and how consistency is about, we aren't a site-based district. We do things we do things centrally, and so if we put out a new instructional materials for high school math, we have all of our high schools doing that. They don't get to pick and choose. Now they get to help choose the program, but that consistency piece is really important. Having technology across the board, and lots of people say leveling the playing field. I want to elevate the playing field for our students. And that's what technology will do for us, making sure you have a really good learning management system that everybody uses. They don't just go use, I like this one versus this one versus this one. No, we get to choose it and we're going to use it. So that consistency piece, I can't stress enough. That's a really important point. Thank you.
Thank you. And coming back to you, Lisa, has the opportunity to go with a platform that everyone's using allowed you to explore and unleash new opportunities to do things a bit differently that you're carrying into the next year? What lessons have you been drawing in your context?
And so I love the word equity, and I have to say that that's how my team leads in our district. It's super important for us. I think we have a very diverse district, and we have to make sure that we're always going through that lens. My team just sat down, even though it's a pandemic. As a team, we sat down and decided that we'd rewrite our mission and vision statement. And so it's that we're going to liberate teaching and learning through culturally responsive and inclusive integration of technology and library resources. And for us, that empowers our kids to have choice. It says that we are going to, like Kale said, we want to collaborate with curriculum and instruction with our, we call it MLE, which most people call it ELA. And that we're partnering with our SEO department and our SEL to make sure that our technology is included and seamlessly integrated through all those departments, so that as we move forward, we do give our kids the ability to do school inside and outside the four walls of the building. And so I think that too, I'm listening to Kale and writing down notes to myself too about it, but I think that connection to our parents who are working hard on communication systems on track to graduate is really important in every district in Colorado. And so we're looking at more transparency for our students and our parents to see that, because before they just walked into the counselor's office and now I can't do that. So how do we help our kids realize where they are in that graduation process? And I think something kind of cool coming out of the pandemic is central office is supporting all schools in some way. And some of my people are supporting kids who are not on track to graduate, and they have weekly meetings with them to help them. So they're making that one-on-one connection with them. And I think it's been pretty powerful for some of our kids who are kind of lost in this sea of remote, hybrid, live stream, where do I belong? So I think that it's really important that we continue to think about all learners and how they use tech and how that can help empower them to be better at learning and do better in moving forward into the next school year as well.
Lisa, can I ask you to repeat that vision or mission statement that you've landed on? It sounds great, and I want to give us all a chance to absorb it.
We liberate teaching and learning through culturally responsive and inclusive integration of technology and library services. I have to say that my library services team, I know we're talking about tech, we have a large collection with Sora where our kids are able to access books anytime, anywhere. And we purchase books based on the needs of our students. And so our collections reflect who our kids are. Whether you're LGBTQ plus and you want a collection, go there and find that. Black Boy Joy as a collection. I can think of thousands of collections for, here's books that are written in Chinese for our kids. So go find something, and our kids should see themselves reflected in our collections. And that's really important to us.
Thank you. David, to round out this this round with the question, what lessons have you drawn in your context about how to successfully drive forward your priorities, be them student achievement, equity, continuity of teaching and learning in a pandemic, with the help of tech?
Absolutely. I just want to echo that consistency, I think, is extremely important, and we've tried to do that too for our staff. I think one thing is that culture is key into everything you do, and we want to really make sure that the learning is driving what we do and not the tech. The tech is there, hopefully in the background, hopefully working with 100% uptime, but we know that doesn't always happen. That's always a challenge. And you know, our superintendent is always about equity for our students. We're a high title district, so we really compare ourselves to surrounding districts more than even internally. And I think for us, that comes down to opportunity and having the tools and providing the tools that students need. That's why it was important to us early on to have that one-to-one at the high school. And it's just exciting to be able to leapfrog, you know, to that being now K-12 with the funds that we've been able to use to support our families. But again, coming back to an opportunity, it's really exciting. We have a partnership with a community college called the Dakota Promise, where every student who graduates from our high school can go to our local community college for free for 2 years. And we also have a concurrent enrollment program. So we have, you know, seniors graduating with their associate's degree with their high school diploma. So for us, it's really about leveling the playing field, as someone else had mentioned. And really that comes down to providing those opportunities for students, because I think opportunity provides motivation, which really helps raise the bar for everybody.
I think I heard you say learning is driving, not the tech, and couldn't agree from a tech perspective. Can't agree with you more. We were recently in an internal conversation, and we were trying to talk through some of the lessons and learn from some of what we've seen. And the theme of that conversation was that it's good pedagogy ultimately that drives success, and tech is the accelerator of good pedagogy, perhaps. But tech is not going to be the reason for your success if it's not in the context of a good digital plan and a good teaching learning plan. So thank you for raising that. So I'm now going to go into a little bit more of a specific question in the context of district digital plans with a challenge that is very real today. We have been hearing a lot about learning loss during the pandemic, and a topic that is heard in living rooms at homes with parents feeling their kids have perhaps not had a year that they think is equivalent to what they would normally have seen, to communities and schools trying to respond to the challenge, to entire countries looking at what's happened across their jurisdiction and wondering how we're going to respond to learning loss. So in the context of your districts, when you look at the challenge of learning loss, how does addressing it fit into your district-wide digital priorities? How do you start to plan for that? Have you started to tackle that, or is that something that you are going to be able to get to as you come up to breathe after the craziness that can be right now? Lisa, we'll start with you on this one.
So that's funny that you bring up this topic. That will be obviously an initiative for us next year. Will be learning loss. We have just started the conversation around that. Coming back from break and getting our K-5 back in school. We've had some meetings this week. We've looked at some reports from the Aspen Institute as well as Greater Council of Schools. And I think what we keep saying, and I think it's important, like we want our kids to move forward. I understand we have to look back and we have to, there's some key concepts maybe that we need to make sure students do, but we don't need to take our kids way back to the beginning of first grade, if that's where they are. We need to scaffold our instruction, give them this opportunity to maybe learn some things online, create a flipped video for our kids to make up for some of those concepts and think about different ways that our kids get to choose their path to learning. And so again, just starting those conversations, when I read that question earlier, I was like, wow, I have a whole slew of things in my email that I need to read right now around that to have that conversation. But I think we're also talking about what is our vision moving forward? And so how do we, and we've said it several times, and I think we're really strong on this, is how do we make sure curriculum and instruction, it's embedded into that process? How is that embedded into all these other things? So we are having a consistent message across the board as we move forward. So, and again, we don't need to penalize kids with worksheets about 2 + 2. Let's move on and let's figure out what does my student need to move forward. And let's see how can we mitigate that learning loss in there by just projects or, real world applications that help our kids learn something maybe that they've missed before this. But again, we're super early in our conversation, but that is like the dream world that I dream of that we will be at someday.
Thank you for that, Lisa. And same question coming to you, David.
So our curriculum department is already looking at how to scaffold, and like Lisa said, we're not going to push the dial back and start all over. We just can't afford to do that for our students. We have to have that immediate sense of urgency of, maintaining the learning that they have and moving them forward. One interesting result from a recent study we did on some data was that our e-learners, full-time e-learners, actually outperformed our hybrid learners, which is kind of what's driving our look at not providing a hybrid, because that consistency, it's got to be consistent, and that's how we're going to move kids forward. But I think what this has done is let us just look outside the box of the typical school day too, because now that students have devices, we have the opportunity to, even if kids are in school, target and personalize and intervene in a much more accurate and effective way. And we're talking about how to have extended learning opportunities that aren't limited by, the 8 to 4 time in the school building, that, we can provide, instruction on the weekend. We can provide instruction in the evening. We can extend through the summer and really engage students where they're at and move them forward. And I think that's where the technology comes in, is in the ability to do that and provide much more opportunity to students with some of the limitations, physical limitations we've had in the past.
The opportunity to scale and reach learners in a different way is 100% something that we spend a lot of time thinking about and focusing on. A lot of our clients, we just kind of captured the problem definition for which we many times get engaged. This is what we want to do. How can you help? And we embark on that journey with them. Kale, what's the learning loss plan or approach on your end? And how do you find tech perhaps supporting that, or a digital plan kind of being part of that?
Well, first of all, boy, Lisa and David, that's tremendous stuff. Great leadership right there. One of the things that we've done, a couple of things that we've done, Howie, is that we went through it for all of our unit plans, and we identified, this is our term, priority evidence outcomes within those evidence plans. Here's what you have to have mastered for the students. And here, then we mapped it to our instructional resources and said, do this lesson, but don't do this lesson. And for our teachers, and we did that through our all of our plans, and we got that done for the rest of the year. It's just like it took a big weight off their shoulders. They feel so much better about that. It's really the part of that idea that guaranteeing viable curriculum. Now it's more viable. It really is. So that's been good. And at some point, I'd love to talk to Lisa and David about moving forward with that, because we know that CDE does a great job at Colorado Department of Education, but boy, there's so much stuff that our kids have to learn without. We better go broad, more in depth. The other thing is, just like these guys said, we're doing office hours after school on the weekends. We're providing tutoring services. We're going to extend our school year by a month and do a thing called Project Launch that will be no cost. And transportation. It's going to be targeted literacy and math instruction for the month of June all the way through. We end typically, traditionally, at the end of May. And so that'll be a K-12 initiative that we have going through. The technology has offered us to be able to have students, and this was mentioned earlier, if you're in a really good, active, engaged, blended environment, your students will want to take ownership of their learning. It won't be, I have to do this. I want to do this. And oh, by the way, I want to build this thing to solve this problem. That's something that we've been really after that real authentic engagement. If you can get that built into your classrooms, into your instructional models, that will really take care of all this learning loss, because students are going to be 24/7 learners. Technology affords that. They can be online, they can go and look, they can post, they can collaborate with other students. You have a district digital library, which I know Lisa has. Those type of things just really afford schooling from where you can learn from wherever you're at. You don't have to be in a brick and mortar setting to do that. So to answer that second part of your question, Howie, that's how technology really elevates that for all of our learners.
First, I'll say I'm going to ask another question, but perhaps turn it to those who have joined us in the audience to pose a question or two. So while we answer this next question, if there are any questions that folks want to pose to the panelists, happy to take them. So just picking up on that, and I heard you kind of speak to a very good planning process, which is having a priority of the evidence and the outcomes. How do we go about, and this question goes for any of you that would like to speak to it, how do we go about identifying the learning loss in the first place? Is that something that you've laid out a plan for? Is that something you're working on? And interested to hear if technology is at the core of helping you identify the learning loss as a starting point as you move into solutions to try to meet that challenge. And again, it's if any of you would like to speak to that, I know it's a big question, but if there are any plans on your districts, it would be really interesting to hear a little bit more about that.
I can jump in. We do have a benchmarking system that is a test on technology that students participate in. We have opened that up so students, to make it as available as possible to all students, so that we've been able to compare where we were last year to where we were this year. We have a beginning of the year and a mid-year assessment. We did not do the end of year last year, but we'll get it filled in this year. And that's how we're targeting those needs. The school principals were meeting this morning talking about how important ELA instruction is. And, one of the key factors is we said, we want students to graduate, and we were connecting, how our third grade data, plays out into the graduation rate, that Kale was talking about, and, how many students go to college based on how they did in their primary grades. So just really emphasizing, that identifying that loss, coming with effective interventions as soon as we can, and really engaging students and families to help them progress so that they can be successful at the end of the term.
We also have a benchmarking system, so that gives us information on this. And I think I may be wrong on this, but it's a lot of the adults are more worried about the learning loss than some of our students are, in a real sense, because our students are engaged. Our students, now not 100%, I'm not naive at that in that regard, but when you build into this idea that they get to control the pace and the place of their learning, they are engaged in something that they find valuable, that they see meaning in, you're not going to see the learning loss. Certainly we'll probably have some, but our benchmarking data, all the things we've been looking at, I'm sure David and Lisa have got back their national merit results back. Ours went up again. So I'm like, wow, what's the lesson we might be learning out of all this is that we really needed to do some of these things and then do them in more in volume and better in terms of engaging students. So we have the benchmarking that we take a look at. We look at that data, and we'll see with this. Again, technology with that, everything that we have, the knowledge of the world is at a student's fingertips. So it also changes the role of teachers. And if a teacher looks at how do I facilitate these experiences versus how do I give her of knowledge, then that changes the whole dynamic of things too. That puts the students at the center of the learning versus the teacher at the center of the learning. And that's a very important concept that districts and schools need to look at, that whole paradigm shift, which I know, Lisa and David and lots of districts in Colorado have been working on for many years and very successfully as well.
Thank you, Kale. Lisa, would you like to add anything on this one?
No, we're in the same place they are with benchmarking. And again, I think taking away from our teachers being the center of the universe and making our students, it's a hard shift. And we know that. We all went to school to be a teacher, and we want to impart our knowledge to our students. And so it's a big shift for our teachers. So I taught before, so not unfamiliar. So again, I think that's a big shift. And like Kale said, we're all working on it. I just think it'll take some time to where that becomes more reality.
Thank you for that. And our attendees are on the shy side today, so we don't have a question coming from them. But again, I would encourage anybody that has a question to pose one. as I've been hearing each of you speak, you've had an approach to providing hardware, you've had an approach to making consistent software available, you've had to make decisions about change management in terms of how you roll support out. There's been choice and flexibility for families and students between being fully online, fully remote, in classrooms, and somewhere in between. One element that I'm interested in hearing just a little bit more from you on is that we talk about K-12, but what we know that the experience between K and 12 is quite different. From a D2L perspective, one of the things we started to realize very, very quickly is that we were getting a lot of requests for help from clients that had very good experience in blended and online learning for high school students, but were really kind of jumping into the early years for the first time. And that meant a few things. We made some product adjustments that allowed for young kids to capture their learning at home with their iPad or with their phone, and made it easy for learning to happen at home in a way that was just a bit different than the way we had kind of worked and enabled our clients in the past. We had early learning specific, early years, I should say, specific webinars and training programs. And it was very clear that we had to work with our clients to make sure that their early years teachers from kindergarten to 5th grade, 6th grade receive some tailored support. So when we talk about digital plans, we really are talking about plans that have to respond to different educators and teachers and students based on where they are. And a lot of what we see landing on the front page of articles tends to be about that kindergarten to grade 5 student and their family or their parents. So I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to what that meant for you during the pandemic, how you supported the younger students, their teachers, and what you're drawing from that as you go back to kind of Kale's initial comment, which is, we're not going back to what we had. There's an opportunity to do things a lot better. If there are any lessons in that context that you take with you into your future digital plans. And I'll leave this one open as well to the volunteer that would like to get us started. Who would like to jump in?
I'm unmuted, so I'll jump in. You know, one of my favorite stories from the shift to e-learning is we launched a family help desk, and just anticipating a huge load, that number rings on my desk phone if it gets if we don't have enough people to pick up. So during that first week, you know, I was helping families and kids out, and under the kind of this guise of how things are different but didn't really change, you know, a student called and said, I can't find my 6th grade class. Where's my 6th grade class? And it brings back those memories of being the middle school administrator, where that was the same thing that happened in the regular school building too. They can't find their classroom. So I think even though some things, you know, how things have changed, but some things stay the same. So I think that's that idea of, you know, remembering the learner, keeping the learner in the front. One thing we had to keep reminding teachers and staff is keep it simple. I mean, some teachers, you know, overachievers, they were designing these huge things within our LMS, and you know, kids couldn't navigate it. So it's just like, keep it simple, keep it to the basics, and just keep the main thing. Keep the focus on the learning and not the technology, and keep those, you know, avenues of access wide open for all learners, the little ones. You know, keep it simple.
I think I can chime into the same thing, David, you're talking about. I think we did professional learning K-5 and professional learning 6-12. Our learning management systems are different in that way. And so I think that was our mantra to our teachers, was like, put a clock on. That's how kids get in the Google Meet every single time. And every lesson you set up has the exact same feel. It can change the color if that's going to make you happy, and put in your Google Classroom, whatever thing you're creating. But don't make it so hard. And then every day when kids come in, you set expectations in your classroom, and that's what you need to do online. Everybody lines up at the door to go to lunch. They all know to look at the board to see this. So bring those things over into the learning management system. And I think in our learning management system, the ability for kids to take pictures, record their voices, and do all those things helped all learners, and our ELA learners especially. But I think, again, we tried to just say over and over, like, don't make this so hard, upload it, give examples, and keep it the same. And then maybe you revisit. And I also think the expectations of your classroom, I think you spend your first 2 weeks building expectations in your real classroom. You still have to do that in your virtual classroom. You still have to model for the kids how to do this every single day for a couple of weeks before they do it. And as we all said, we moved back and forth. And it's like when we came back to school, we said, do not drop the learning management system and hand out worksheets, because you're going to go back remote at some point in time. And for those who listen, it worked out probably pretty well. And for those who gave kindergartners 2 weeks off from a learning management system, they probably went home and went, I don't remember where my class is, or I don't remember how to log in. And they probably had to start that process all over again. So consistency, I think, was important, especially for K-5.
We found out that we had a learning management system when we went into the remote learning, that we actually had to add an additional one that was different. Kind of what Elisa was saying, that it wasn't conducive to K-3 students. We had to get something that was a little bit better, where they could post pictures and really do that. It really was more conducive to younger kids. So that's one adjustment that we made with this. And we really stressed with our teachers, really, we need to keep fostering relationships as you go through this, and creating that culture of active learning, that's engagement. And here's the thing, we value foundations, but we want innovation as well. And so how do students apply their learning? And that's something that I think it really helps out, even in the youngers. I've been in, we created a virtual online school. We had one in the high school, but we did a K through 12. I'm sure many districts across Colorado did this. And it was amazing how, for a 3,400 student school, how our teachers are creating and fostering relationships for students they've never seen in person. And it is the culture that's in there is amazing. There's certain tricks and tips that you need to do, routines, as Lisa said, that you set up, but it can be done. It can be done at a high level too. I'm not just saying to survive. It can be done at a high level as well. So there's some things, there's definitely some adjustments as you go through this for the younger students. I think it's particularly with more asynchronous learning, there needs to be a responsible adult at home that can help guide this. That's one thing we found out that we insisted upon, particularly with our totally online school. There has to be someone to help out with these login issues for particularly our K2 kids. It really has to, have to help out with that. So thank you.
Thank you to all of you. That's really interesting, and it's been I think a theme from some of the conversations we've had, that there's been some stress and anxiety during the pandemic, but some really nice surprises. Like, some teachers have really flourished and become excellent online teachers or blended teachers, and they will not go back. They found that they can build really great experiences for students in a way that they just maybe were limited to do before. We do have one question from a panelist, and after this, I'll wrap it up and hand it back to Leilani to say any last words if you would like to, and make sure people are able to move forward with their meetings, because everyone's back to back, I'm sure, these days. But the question is a good one. Any concern about reduced technology support, fatigue being an example of that, from parents or other stakeholders, and how that might impact the success of digital plans going forward? So I think if I'm reading this correctly, the reporting has been, in some cases, negative. Fatigue's coming up in a variety of places. Folks are kind of tired of everything we've had to do. Not everybody's seeing the lessons as the main kind of item to move forward with. How do we balance that with sharing enough about the successes, sharing enough about the great things we've learned as we move into digital plans for the future? And with this last one, I'm just going to go in the order of my screen, if that's okay with you guys. Lisa, David, and Kale, and we'll wrap it up after that.
So I think that is a theme that's happening, that you're hearing about fatigue, computer fatigue, and we're online too much, all those kinds of things, which as adults, we are also some days computer fatigued, Zoom fatigued. But I think that we have to show our constituents and our parents and teachers that, you know, we have to let the learning lead and not the technology, which David said earlier. And I think that's the message that we continue to say, but I'm pretty sure we're all in the same boat, that we continue to buy online curriculum. And that is the way that we will access our curriculum moving forward. And so if I don't have a device to get to the curriculum, then our students aren't going to be able to learn the curriculum. So I think it's that we're leading with the learning always. And we're not just using a device to use a device. We don't just stick kids on a device to sit there and play games during the day and watch YouTube videos. But it actually is giving them voice and choice, as Kale said. It's allowing them to do learning anytime, anywhere. And I think those are messages that we have to put out there through our boards of education. I'm hoping there will eventually be some studies around what happened during the pandemic. I know it will take a while, but hopefully those things will help us be able to show parents and teachers and students that, you know, this is the way of the future. And as an adult, I'm pretty sure this is what we're going to continue to do in the future. And how will the workplace change for education from central office down to teachers? And that this is way more convenient for me to do meetings with people across the district than it is for me to drive across my doorstep.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lisa. David, over to you.
So kind of to echo what Lisa said, as far as, I like to call it strategic balance of what is online and what's asynchronous, what's synchronous, what can students do. I don't think students are fatigued. I never see a student without a device attached to their hand permanently. I mean, that'll probably be the next invention, permanent fixture to someone's hand, because, so I'm not sure students are fatigued. Absolutely parents are fatigued. You know, when their hotspot doesn't work and the teams meeting, you know, there's lag, or they get, you know, anyone in a meeting knows sometimes you get bounced off. So they're certainly there. So I think it's being empathetic with the parents and meeting them where they are and providing that ongoing support, on top of being strategic in the use of technology. And really one thing that we're looking at with our e-learning school that we plan to continue is taking the curriculum maps we have and identifying what content can be delivered in the best modality and be strategic. So it's not like we're going to push everything online in meetings. We're calling it High Flex Plus. We're talking about having learning pods and, you know, so some in-person learning, some online, some independent, but really being strategic about it in what we feel, what standards can be delivered in what modality, to hopefully provide that balance and create achievement and success for students.
Thank you, David. And Kale, we'll give you the last word.
That's brilliant. Certainly we don't want students online 7 hours a day. And that's where I think we have to educate all of us, students, teachers, and especially parents, in the idea of engagement and asynchronous learning. That there's going to be learning going on. It doesn't have to be in front of a screen. It doesn't have to be in the class. And that's where that whole engagement piece comes in. And being, again, very, as it just stated, strategic about things. We have outlined best practices for online learning. Give you an example. I think choice boards are just dynamite, giving kids choice to get to the learning through a variety of modalities and getting some things. A quick story, my youngest son is a teacher in our district. He's a physical education teacher. He's over for dinner one night. We go on a walk, and here comes these two kids flying down the street on their skateboards. And when they go by, they go, "Hey, Mr. Charles." And I'm like, I don't know. Well, they weren't talking to the old man. They were talking to young Mr. Charles. And a part of his choice board for this was to get out and on their skateboards and go around. And so he goes, I'll mark you off in the learning management system. I almost said what it was, but that was a very engaging thing. And to see our teachers around the district that are using videos, using choice boards, using all these different online discussions. Catlin Tucker has some great podcasts about how we look at collaboration as assessment. Think about that. That's amazing. That used to be called cheating back in my day, if you collaborated on something. So those type of things are what we do so that the fatigue doesn't set in. If you try and overlay a traditional schooling that many of us in this webinar went through, unfortunately, into this, yeah, you're going to get fatigued without a doubt. It's going to be a disaster. If you do some of the things that Lisa and Dave are talking about, you're not going to have you're going to have engaged students.
Well, thank you for that, and I love that story. By the way, I may have to repeat it in future conversations. There are a few things I take from this. One is that Colorado schools in various parts of the states are in really good hands because your leadership is an absolute positive example on what has happened, lessons that are being drawn along the way, and how that's going to inform next steps. I look forward to continuing to look at your plans and your success as you liberate teaching and learning through culturally responsive and inclusive ways, as we've learned in a new mission, and the rest of your plans. Just as I wrap up here, I just want to say thank you again to you, to Leilani. If you would like to learn, to those who have attended, learn more about D2L and our K-12 learning solutions, d2l.com/K12, or reach out directly to k12@d2l.com. Thank you. Over to you, Leilani.
Yeah, and thanks everyone. And I know we just talked about, teacher fatigue. I think we also all have, elastic waistband fatigue from so many months of, sweatpants basically around the house. I want to give everyone this last assignment, and that is, be aware of how much culture has changed. People have taken up cooking. People have done a lot more dog walking, and interest in pets is way up, and home improvement and money management. There's a lot of new things on the table, right? So I want to leave everybody with that. It's going to get exciting. I mean, the change is very dynamic in so many different dimensions and tangents and directions of the change. And that means let's get excited. Let's just really be excited about the future and everything that's coming, because it's fun to not have the usual old stuff that we've been doing forever, and we're just sort of tweaking mildly some lessons. No. We're in a moment of total revolution, and it's a time to be alive and really, riveted with, grit and what we could be doing better and differently and all that other stuff. So I want to leave you all with that. And, looks like we have a last screen share here from D2L. Thank you so much, Howie, and you and your team for sponsoring this event and letting us come together with Colorado right now and find out what they're doing there. So thanks everybody for joining. See you next time. This has been Leilani Cawthon from the Learning Council. Bye, Lisa. Bye, David. Bye, Kale. Bye, Howie. Thanks for being here, everyone. Bye for now.